let's talk about the Falcon. Finally finished it. Well, there's a few things I still need to do to it, but all in all, it's pretty well finished. The 289 and the C4, I have a feeling this is the way the Sprint should have been built to begin with. It's got a lot of pickup, a lot better than the 260 and the little 2-speed automatic. Much nicer. Effortless acceleration. It just takes off and goes. Holds freeway speeds real well. To get back, we'll talk about some of the things that have happened that, things that happened nicely and ways that it fought me. So let's go back to the house. Hey YouTube, this will be about the third time that I've tried recording this video, trying to put something together about the Falcon so that we can finish up this project, move on with something else. The engine's in, we knew that. We got the motor in, it's all hooked up, it's running now. The few little odds and ends still need to happen. I need to tie up the loose ends with these wires. The plug wires are a mess. The PCV still needs to be hooked up. That kind of thing. I need to at least run a hose off the radiator overflow, or I'd like to get up a little burp tank. We got the power steering pump was torn apart, rekitted. I got a new seal in it. It doesn't leak anymore, which is kind of nice. We had problems with seals from the very beginning. The transmission front pump seal was leaking about as soon as we put transmission fluid in it. It started pouring fluid out of it. That had to drop the transmission out. There was the side manual selector shaft seal on the transmission started leaking after we got it all back together, so we had to take it apart and fix that. And so anyway, there's absolutely no leaking at this point that I'm aware of. There's some old spots on the floor from when I was working on it, but as far as I know, it's all taken care of. The wheels, these were, if you were paying attention to earlier videos that I've done, these wheels were the wheels that I'd picked up for the 63 Ranchero. I decided to put the reverse smoothies on the Ranchero because it's the round body. I think these look a little better on the the body, the 64, 65 with the little darts down the side. It kind of emulates that. Another thing is, because we changed to another transmission, this was a factory, when it was new, the original 64 Sprint came with a 260 and a 2-speed automatic, and we put the 289 and a C4 in it. The rear tires on that we picked up that are on it now are significantly taller than the ones that were on it before, and just through dumb luck, the combination of these tires and that transmission, the speedometer reads just dead gnats. I mean, we had it on the GPS, and gauge will read 65, and the GPS says I'm doing 64, so that's pretty close. We got the dual exhaust on it, and that was actually just some horse trading that I did, where I swapped out I got the right exhaust manifold for the left side that allows it to come out the right direction, and I can show you a picture. I might have a picture of that, I don't know, maybe not. But anyway, that's basically it. One major thing that we had immediately into it was the engine was, I didn't seal off the valve covers when I first start the engine. There's a few things that I don't do when I do an initial startup. One is I never put coolant antifreeze in the radiator. I just put clear water when I do the initial startup, because invariably if there's a leak, it's because you just put, a gallon of antifreeze in your car. If you don't, there's no leak. But if you do have a leak, you don't lose the cost of the antifreeze, and it doesn't hurt it to start, for your initial break-in. You can run it like that. It's got antifreeze in it now, but that's one thing that I never do. Another thing is I seldom ever seal the valve covers initially, because I like to open that back up and check it out. And I'll hit this briefly. the one of the valve guides, the valve pushrod guides, they're machined into the heads. They're basically a slot, and it allows the pushrod to move one direction. It doesn't allow it to move side to side. Well, one of them was machined wrong or damaged somehow, and rather than pull the head and put another head on it, which I could have done, I actually have another head, but what I did was I built a little tiny pushrod guide out of a piece of 3/16 plate, and I'll show you the picture right now. I'll put that on there. And basically what it does is the rocker, it's that roller-tipped rocker, it was, when I first pulled the valve cover off, it was sideways and twisted, and it was running crooked on the valve stem, and we can't have that. So basically built my own little guide plate, and it's kind of an asymmetric, so it's just one guide. It works beautifully. I suspect that someday, if this engine ever gets pulled apart, there's going to be some mechanic think I've just gone off the deep end, but I thought it was a stroke of genius. So to get it on, you have to actually hammer it down. It's got a little bit of an interference fit on the rocker studs. So most of those guide plates, when you do it like the aftermarket stuff, you pull the studs out, the rocker studs out, and then you drill it and tap it for a 7/16 new threaded rocker stud, and then you put the little guide plates underneath that, and you crank it down and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't need to do all that, I don't think, on this. I'm sure of it. It works beautifully. I haven't had a problem with it since. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing about the transmission I wanted to hit on. This is what they call a green dot transmission. I'll show you the little gear selector. It'll say it says park, reverse, neutral, and then it says drive, and drive is over a little white dot and a little green dot. And the little green dot, as I understand it, the way that it was supposed to be, that the mentality was, the original transmission was just a 2-speed. So you put it in drive, and it just went 1, 2, and then it was gone. On this, I think what the mentality was is you put it in the little white dot for drive, and it takes off in second, and it kind of basically emulates the feeling of the old transmissions, the original, what people were used to at the time. And then what happened was, if you really wanted to take off in first, you put it on the green dot. So then it goes 1, 2, 3. This happens to be a 1964 C4. It was the very first generation of C4, as far as I'm aware anyway, and it has that correct valve body in it. And after we fiddled around with the selector, the gear selector stuff, we've got it where, now the shifter, it reads right, it does all that stuff. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. I need to replace the collar on the shifter collar, and the actual shifter itself, it's a little loose. It's just worn out. I didn't realize it was that bad. But otherwise, I think... there's a lot of little things I could talk about on this motor, and like I said, this is the third time I recorded the video, and a lot of it was, every time I ended up spending like 20 minutes of just talking, and I don't want a video where it's just me talking for 20 minutes. And we did take it for a drive today. We put about 100 miles on it today. We drove up to, we live in Bakersfield, so we drove it to Tehachapi, which is up in the mountains. Drove beautifully, right up the hill, plenty of power, no problem whatsoever. I thoroughly happy with it. So anyway, that's it. I think that is all we need to talk about on the little Falcon. I do want to mention that, I don't really have to mention it. I'm not even sure I should, but we did decide to name it. We hadn't given it a name. Most of our cars have names. We've got, the 1960. This is Orson wheels. The 63 that's in really sad shape there, that's rusty. Then we have over there, that's our Mazda. That's a 91 Mazda, which is basically the Ford Explorer, very first year of the Explorer. It was doted on us from my wife's grandmother. It's Black Betty. But for those of you that know anything about the history of the Falcons, or in Ford in general at the time, in the 60s, early 60s, they were using the characters from the Peanuts, from Charles Schultz Peanuts. So, you know, Snoopy, Charlie Brown, all those guys in their advertising. And one of them was Linus. And if you own a convertible, you generally have a blanket with you. So we've named this Linus. So the 1964 Sprint has been named Linus. So in the future, if I mention Linus, that's Linus right there. So anyway, again, like I said, I could go on and on and on about some of the nightmares I had with this thing, and the transmission, and the cheap Chinese seals, and the weirdness that, you know, had to take it apart, put it together, take it apart, put, you know, that kind of stuff. But it ends up me just talking too long, and I feel like I've talked too long already. Coming events, I don't know that I'll record any of it. I don't know what I'll do, but the panel truck's getting a different transmission soon. I've got it pretty well ironed out what I'm going to do. I have a 51 Willys in the side yard over here. I'll probably get it running next. After I get the transmission in the panel, I'll start working on the Willys, and then we'll get back to Rusty. I have plans for Rusty still. I haven't done a lot with him, but it's coming soon. And I have been doing a little bit with him, but it's really boring, and it's not stuff that's interesting to watch with me just kind of patching sheet metal here every once in a while. And that's one of the other issues, is I don't work on it with any regularity. So anyway, that's where we're at. The Falcon's done as far as I'm concerned. A little, like I said, a little odds and ends, that kind of stuff is coming up, but that's it. So I took some footage today of our trip up to the, you know, up to the Tehachapi Mountains, and so I'll post some of that. So bye.